Most people scrolling tonight were not meant to receive this. If this finds you, your awareness has already crossed a threshold. There is a small number attached to this frequency, 7. In the pattern that governs this cycle, 7 souls are being invited to carry this tone forward. That statement is not meant to puff a crown on your head. It is not an absolute decree that removes your agency. It is a marker, a filter, a kind of litmus that says something about the kind of pressure you have already held and the capacity you have quietly built. If you feel the pull of what I am saying, pause for a moment and mark your presence. If this resonates, tap like and comment 99 as your seal of recognition. Let that simple symbol be a private confirmation that you heard this interruption. You know why this is interruptive. You have felt the pressure for years, maybe decades, the steady, intimate weight that isn't ordinary stress. It sits like a band across your chest or a low hum behind your eyes. It comes in cycles. Relationships that unravel in the same pattern, careers that plateau then collapse at the moment of a breakthrough, recurring dreams that refuse to be decoded, an intuition that arrives as a flash and keeps proving itself right. You have had nights where the world narrowed to a single insistence in your body, as if something inside you was being tested for endurance. That ongoing calibration has felt like punishment at times, and in truth it has been a preparation. Here are the signs you know already, in the language of your bones. First, persistent pressure. This is not the passing anxiety that comes with a deadline. It is a long-term, structural feeling, a gravity to your inner landscape. It can show as insomnia that arrives without obvious cause, a tightness behind the throat, or a chronic sense of being on the edge of a decision that never resolves. It is the pressure that ages you faster on the inside than on the outside, the sensation that your nervous system is being honed by a slow blade. Second, recurring cycles. You keep replaying the same scenes with different actors. Lovers, friends, or jobs reappear with slight variations, insisting you learn something that you have not yet permitted yourself to receive. These cycles are not accidents. They are the honing mechanism of a curriculum you did not choose consciously, designed to push your integrity into shape. Third, acute intuition. You have had flashes, small decisive nudges, that later prove accurate. You may have turned away from a path and later discovered how narrowly you avoided a collapse. You may have known what someone would say before they spoke. These moments have been brushed off by others as lucky guesses, but they are evidence of a specific signature. Your awareness is calibrated to notice patterns under the surface. Fourth, isolation that feels both chosen and forced.
You find yourself standing slightly apart, not because you dislike people, but because the frequency of conversation often feels incongruent with your inner measurements. People look to you to be steady, yet you often feel unseen. Loneliness, in your case, has been less about social deficit and more about purification, clearing the noise so that a clearer line of perception could emerge. Fifth, moral consistency under pressure. When shortcuts were available, the easier gain, the flattering direction that would have protected your comfort, you resisted. That resistance was not always noble in the way the world calls noble. Sometimes it was simply stubbornness, sometimes fear. But through that resistance, a habit formed. You learned to hold to an internal arithmetic that does not bend simply for advantage. That habit is rarer than you think. It is one of the key things being observed. These are not badges meant to elevate you above others. They are observations meant to situate you. If this transmission found you, if these lines moved you to breathe differently, then something in the invisible architecture of your life has aligned with what the transmission carries, and that alignment is what defines the threshold. So, what is happening beyond your subjective sense? There is in the field that surrounds all things a silent observer, not a person, not an external tribunal, but a mechanism that registers endurance, consistency, and the capacity to carry weight. Think of it as a non-judgmental gauge. It watches not to punish, but to measure readiness. It attends to how you behave when no one is watching, to the degree you can hold yourself steady when recognition is absent, and to whether you can maintain moral coherence when pressured to take the easier path. That observer registers small things: how you answer when your name is not called, whether you finish what you start when the reward is uncertain, how you hold tenderness when you are hurt. Over time, these micro-choices accumulate into a visible pattern. Why 7? Why such a limited number? Because the quality required is exacting under duress. The world produces many luminous moments of insight. Fewer souls can live through the slow, erosive tests without hardening into cynicism or being seduced by shortcuts. 7 is not a boast. It is a practical limit. It is a threshold of completion. When the right combination of endurance, integrity, and capacity align under strain, you cross into a different register of responsibility. 7 is the symbol of that small, rare cohort, an acknowledgement that rarity is part of the work, not a statement of moral superiority. It is possible that the count may change in other cycles. The point is the selectivity, not the exactitude. There has been an unfolding process in your life, invisible yet precise. For a long time you were under observation.
Now observation begins to loosen its grip and activation starts to arrive.
But before we open that door fully, we must speak about the crucial moment almost everyone in this pattern experiences: the rupture. Something had to break. It is not a melodramatic phrase. It is mechanical truth. Pressure reaches a limit. The old story, the identity built around survival strategies and compensations, fails to sustain the new demands placed upon you. The rupture is not a moral failure. It is a necessary collapse to release the brittle structures that cannot carry the new capacity. You will remember the day or the string of days, a relationship that imploded in a way that made you see your own compromises, a job loss that left you exposed, a dream that disintegrated at the point of fruition. At the time, it felt like destruction. Later, you will recognize it as a birth canal. The rupture is both violent and tender. It shakes loose the parts of you that depend on external validation. It reveals the rawness you had skirted. You may have felt unhinged, stripped of identity, and angry at the timing. Within that breakdown, however, something vital is revealed, the deeper structure that already existed beneath your worn coping strategies. That deeper structure, a quieter integrity, a refined center, is what the silent observer has been waiting to see. It is easier to miss than to notice. That is why the rupture is essential. It exposes whether what lies beneath is merely a facade or an actual foundation. When the rupture occurs, two things happen simultaneously. One, the observation phase ends. The field that has been quietly assessing steps forward. It no longer needs to hold you at a distance. Two, activation begins. Activation is not fireworks. It begins as specificity. Where you were once generally intuitive, you now begin to perceive with exactness. Where your moral compass used to swing broadly, it now points with surgical clarity. The noise retracts. Tasks and responsibilities land with sharper edges. You will find that your inner sense will stop offering vague nudges and begin to present precise directives: who to speak with, what project to focus on, what boundary to enforce, what compassion to offer. Do not mistake specificity for easy answers. Activation carries demand. The observer hands you increased discernment, and that discernment comes with accountability. You will be called to hold steady in situations where most would walk away. You will be expected to labor quietly, to carry weight in plain sight without the need for applause. This is the work of the seven: to accept responsibility without seeking public accolade, to carry truth that is inconvenient, to be the ones who can commit to a course not because it is recognized, but because it is right. Here are practical signs of activation you may notice in the weeks and months after the rupture. You will begin to notice a sharpening of perception. Small incongruities will strike you immediately. A half-truth in a conversation will register like a bruise.
You will see the architecture of problems faster than usual and outline remedies that are practical and sober. Your sense of timing will improve. Where previously you moved with anxious haste or stalled indecision, a new cadence will arrive, a steadier gait, a willingness to wait for the right opening rather than seize the convenient one. You will attract a specific kind of responsibility. Doors that were previously closed will open, but not for glory. They will open because someone needs steadiness more than charisma, because a role requires the patient carrying of nuance and weariness. Your relationships will shift. Some will fall away, not out of judgment, but due to incompatibility of frequency. Others will become deeper, asking of you things that mirror the moral demands being placed upon you. You will be given opportunities to practice compassion without being invited to perform it to an audience. You will carry knowledge differently. Rather than seeking the immediate comfort of certainty, you will hold paradoxes longer. Ambiguity will be a tool rather than a torment. That capacity will be essential because the work you are asked to carry is rarely binary. Remember, activation does not erase the burden. It changes its shape. What was once a generalized pressure becomes a specific set of tasks that expect fidelity. The cost is subtle and cumulative. You will be tempted to wonder whether the sacrifice is fair. It is not fair in the way fairness is defined by the market. It is meaningful in the way a long apprenticeship is meaningful. The learning is slow and the reward is capacity. Now, about 99. In the mythology of this transmission, 99 is a symbolic marker, a seal for the moment you recognize that something has shifted. Commenting 99 is not an incantation. It will not guarantee anything by itself. Think of it instead as a bookend, a simple communal act that acknowledges the crossing of a line. When you place that mark, you are doing three things simultaneously. You are testifying to yourself, you heard this, you accepted that the threshold exists. You are joining a small symbolic cohort. Others who resonate can also mark presence. And you are installing a mnemonic. Later, when the work grows dense, the memory of that first recognition can steady you.
If you have already commented 99 somewhere, keep that quiet seal close. If you haven't, and this resonated, do that simple act now. It is an acknowledgement, not an order. There are important ethical contours to keep in view here. This message names a small number, and that naming can trigger desire for exclusivity. Resist that pull. Rarity does not confer moral superiority. The 7 are not better people. They are people who, through an odd intersection of life choices and insistencies, have been asked to carry a certain workload. That invitation carries humility. It asks for service, not status.
It asks you to steward whatever capacity you receive with care, and to remember those who are not called in the same way. Do not assume that being outside this pattern means less value. All souls have roles. This description applies to a specific, rare calling within this cycle, not to the measure of anyone's worth. There is also a temptation to interpret the silence and the tests as punishment. They are not. Think of them instead as calibration. The field that observed you was not cruel, it was precise. It pays attention to the small choices that over time predict whether you will bend under weight or distribute it. That patient observation is not punitive, it is formative. Your loneliness was not a verdict, it was clearing. Your cycles were not spite, they were lessons. Your rupture was not annihilation, it was birth. At the same time, we must be candid about the moral cost. Activation asks of you what most social climates do not reward: patience in ambiguity, restraint when being provoked, the continued practice of compassion for those who cannot reciprocate. You will carry labor that yields little immediate acknowledgement. That withholding of applause will test you. Your measure will be whether you continue because the work matters, not because it cheers you. We must also speak plainly about the freedom in this. You are not trapped by destiny. Nothing in this account removes your agency. Awareness crossing a threshold is an indication, not a sentence. You may accept, decline, or negotiate that call. You may step into activation with humility, or you may choose a different path. The silent observer does not coerce, it notices. What you choose after this notice is your responsibility. For those who accept the invitation, here are 7 practices to hold as you step into activation. Practical, not mystical ways to carry capacity without losing yourself. First, carve slow spaces. You will be asked to do difficult things. Protect the interior with rhythms that are slow and regenerative. Sleep, movement, and a daily moment of undistracted attention are not optional. They are the infrastructure of sustainable work. Second, cultivate small honesty. Speak truth in micro-instances. Correct a misstatement, admit a minor error. These low-stakes acts of integrity build the muscle needed for higher-stakes fidelity. Third, keep limits. Activation amplifies demand. Learn to say no when a request will deplete your core. Boundaries are not selfishness in this phase, they are stewardship. Fourth, choose practice over performance. The field values labor where no witness is required. Do the hard polishing behind the scenes. The work will often be invisible for a long time. Fifth, lean into mentorship and accountability. Find 1 or 2 people who will hold you honestly. The path tempts isolation. Guard against the arrogance of solitude. Sixth, tend to compassion with clarity. Recognize that others suffer in different ways. Extend aid when you can, but avoid rescuing when it prevents growth in others. Your role is not to fix everyone, but to hold presence and discern when to act. Seventh, record the small confirmations. Keep a journal of synchronistic details and exact perceptions that later prove accurate. These records become maps when doubt arrives. None of these practices promise glamour. They promise steadiness. They ask you to be honest about the cost and faithful to the call. You may ask, what will people see? Activation is not usually accompanied by dramatic alterations. The outward life may remain stable, while the inner architecture deepens. Some of you will gain roles of quiet influence: a teacher who reshapes a curriculum, a caregiver who organizes care networks with rare precision, a creative who produces work that holds contradiction without collapsing into propaganda. Others will find their public profile remains small, while their decisions ripple subtly through systems in ways only later recognized. Do not measure success by applause. Measure it by the integrity of the work. As you move forward, you will encounter tests that are less obvious than the rupture. You will be tempted to justify expedience when stakes are high. You will encounter people who will flatter or frighten you into choices that degrade the capacity you have been given. The true test of activation is not commuting to difficult situations. It is staying faithful when the easier, lucrative, or safer option offers immediate relief. The silent observer continues to attend to that fidelity, even after activation begins. That attention is not punitive, it is consequential. There is also grace here. You are not required to bear this alone. Community is part of the design for those who enter into activated stewardship. Seek it. Not every community will understand the contours of this calling.
Seek companions who value reserved labor and moral consistency. This will not be a crowd. That is fine. The work of these 7 is necessarily concentrated. Now, a final practical note about the signifiers we have used: 7, rupture, 99. Treat them as poetic tools, markers that help you map an interior geography. They are not spells, and they are not infallible rhetorics. They are mythic containers for real processes. Use them to name what is happening without turning them into certainties that absolve you of further inquiry. Let them be guideposts, not the whole road. If this has landed for you, if you have a sense tightening in your chest as you read, then the next step is not spectacle. The next step is work. Stay present to small acts of discipline. Protect your interior life. Be patient with yourself when the old stories rise. When you are tempted to measure yourself against others, remember, rarity does not mean superiority. It means responsibility. And while you take these steps, remember the symbol you placed at the start.
If you tapped like and commented 99, keep that gesture as a quiet seal. It will be a reminder when the days lengthen and the tasks multiply. You heard this interruption. You marked your presence. You made a choice to listen. If you want to go deeper with this lineage of listening, subscribe and continue with the material that follows. There are conversations to be had, careful explorations of how to steward capacity, how to hold labor without losing heart, and how to translate inner specificity into compassionate action. Join the conversation, watch the next video linked below, or enter the community where others who resonated with this frequency are sharing practices and honest struggle. This is not a promise that the road will be easy. It is a sober offer. The work you are being asked to do matters. It matters because steadiness is rare, and because when truth is carried with integrity, it changes things slowly but substantially. You have been observed. You have been tested. The rupture has revealed what was necessary. Now activation calls, and with it a life that asks for patience, clarity, and unglamorous fidelity. Hold the weight gently. Carry it with humility. Keep your eyes steady on the simple acts that preserve your center. The field will continue to notice. You will have opportunities to act. Do not seek recognition. Seek rightness. Do not rush the outcome. Do the next honest thing. If this reached you, you have crossed a threshold. That crossing is the beginning of a long, exacting, and meaningful labor. Be brave in the small ways. Be kind to yourself in the larger collapses. And remember the seal you chose: 99. Keep it close, not as a talisman, but as a reminder that you heard the interruption and chose once again to show up.